Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you the most overpowered wizard paladin multi-class build in Baldur's Gate 3. And a just brief description of what we'll be going through. We're going to use the blade singing wizard, which can give us an extra attack. And if we take 10 levels of it and 2 levels of the paladin, we still get full spell progression. So we can learn the level 6 spells that we want from scrolls. We also get all the benefits of the blade singing wizard, which is quite a bit. And we can also use heavy armor if we so please, if we start with the paladin. So I'm actually going to go with the wizard here to start, and I find that there's a specific setup for gear that works very well for this. So going with the wizard here, the absolute best cantrip to roll with is Booming Blade, without a doubt. We'll also get Divine Smites too, which are quite powerful, but Booming Blade, it'll scale up to do a 2d8 and then eventually, or whenever the target moves, a 3d8 of damage. So that's an extra 5d8 of damage. And we can also set our Divine Smites through reactions, so we can smite through our Booming Blade. It's crazy. We'll also grab, if you want, Mage Hand can be nice to throw healing potions to keep your team alive. Bone Chill can stop targets from receiving healing, which is super useful into Act 2. Minor Illusion can group enemies into a spot and help you steal from them if you'd please. But I think the best choice for something is probably like Mage Hand and Bone Chill there. So these three, you can use Firebolt or Ray of Frost if you prefer. And for our spells that we're going to grab here. Now, getting Shield is extremely useful. Mage Armor can be nice early game if you want to use robes, but we don't have to. We can go with Magic Missile. Also, you can buy Scrolls and Mage Armor too to kind of make it a little easier. I'd like to have Long Strider for the increased movement speed by 3 meters, which can mean the difference between hitting an enemy or not. Thunderwave, Find Familiar for the Raven is really good too. And Grease is a pretty useful spell, or Chromatic Orb to choose a damage type. I think Grease is a little bit better for crowd control without a concentration. Now, our ability scores are kind of important here. Charisma is nice, but that's only going to be for commands. And we have actually some better ways to get our stats up for that. So something like this can work well if we want a bit of charisma for just, if you're the face of the party, this would be a good option. You can put those points into wisdom, however, but 16 dexterity, 14 constitution, and 16 intelligence for obviously our main spellcasting stat. This will work best, but we can also add in some to our charisma as well there. And if you got an item like the Constitution Amulet or Dexterity Gloves, you can dump those as well. Now, I know I'm going to get some questions about the armor. So this is the Valkyrie Queen armor set by Ren. One of the best looking armor sets in the game by far. For mods. Now, we're going to take out the second level, the Blade Singing Wizard. We're going to multi-class this a little bit later on, but we're going to get this because this gives us the Blade Song for a +2 to armor class, eventually a +4, and +4 to Constitution saving throws, and advantage on acrobatics checks. We can also take some more spells here if you want. Sleep's actually really good early game to combine 3 goblins to sleep, which is pretty useful. Chromatic Orb and Ice Knight give us some spells that we can cast, though. And Blade Singing Weapon. This just gives us a free weapon like the Quarterstaff. I like the longswords. You'll be at this point able to get the Fowler Alluve weapon, potentially a couple levels later. That's probably the best in slot early game weapon to use. And for our prepared spells, something like this can work well if you want. You can have the Find Familiar Raven. And the Raven's good because it'll apply blind on targets, making you get advantage on attack rolls against them. Now, level 2 brings us some very effective spells. Now, in Act 3 or Act 2, you can get the Fire Acuity Hat, and Scorching Ray will give you max stacks of Arcane Acuity, so that's always a good spell to have. Hold Person, also a very effective spell. Misty Step is another very beneficial spell to have. And we can also add Shadowblade or Darkness too, but I think the two best starting off is Scorching Ray and Hold Person. These also combo together very well, and we'll throw on Scorching Ray there. Just very effective. But level 4 is when we get to prepare an extra spell because we get a feat. And I would recommend taking the Intelligence increase at level 4. This will allow us to prepare another spell. But what we're going to take for spells is, it's your choice. There's a few really good ones. I like Misty Step for the bonus action teleport. The Mirror Image spell is nice too to set your armor class up to a +9 armor class, and it gets reduced every time you get attacked. Also, Shadowblade, a very effective spell. You can do 2 to 12 or 2 to 16 psychic damage with an attack. This scales up to do a 4d8 of psychic damage, which is the strongest melee weapon in the game, which is also doubled. So Shadowblade is extremely effective. I know some people don't like Shadowblade, so if you're not going to use Shadowblade, Misty Step, Mirror Image are 2 really good spells. If you really want to maximize damage, Darkness and Shadowblade would be the best way to go, but I'm just going to add in the Shadowblade there. And you can also take Invisibility if you prefer that too. Now, at this point, I think Firebolt's nice because there's sometimes explosives that you want to blow up without wasting a Scorching Ray, so we're going to take that. And again, we took the ability score improvement so that we can now prepare an extra wizard spell, and we hit level 5 here. This gives us, again, we get choice of now level 3 spells with some really effective ones. I always recommend taking Counterspell really early on. This is so useful. And we can take a damage spell like Lightning Bolt or Fireball. Also, Haste can be good, but I prefer that from a sorcerer that can twin it. And at this next level, I would recommend taking Counterspell here, and also Lightning Bolt if you want a bit of extra damage, so you can go with something like that. But level 6 is our big power spike. Level 5 is a power spike, but this is another one. We get an extra attack, so we can do Booming Blade and then follow up with an attack. And at this point, I think it's best to, we'll add in Fireball, and Sleet Storm's another good spell. Fear, or the Glyph of Warding. Even Haste is pretty effective as mentioned, but better from a Sorcerer. If you want to maximize, you could go with Darkness from an earlier level, or even the Mirror Image. And you can also learn these spells from scrolls, so there's a lot of options there. I think Darkness really opens things up if you want to use the Eversight Ring. I'm going to take Mirror Image there just to increase overall armor class, and we'll throw on Fireball. Now, at level 6, this is when I actually think it's best to multi-class. And if we're being fully honest, it might be best to start as the Paladin once you get to level 8. And then with the Paladin, you get heavy armor proficiency, which is a little bit better. Although you may not always use the heavy armor proficiency, it'll then make your spellcasting modifier Intelligence. So that's something to keep in mind. So when we switch to the Paladin here, your scrolls and Illithid abilities will use Charisma. So this would be better to start as a Paladin. I just want to start with the Blade Singing Wizard, as that's kind of the main focus of this build, and how would it be best to progress until you hit that level 8 mark. Now, for subclasses, the Oath of the Ancients is kind of fun, but I do think the best choice is this Oath of Vengeance, which can give you a bonus action, 2 extra radiant damage, and can daze targets for 1 turn. Daze means they have disadvantage on wisdom saves. Hold person and command are more likely to land, which is something we do get from the Paladin. Now, the Oath of the Crown is the newest subclass in patch 8. This can add your proficiency bonus to attack rolls. That is also quite good. But we're going to go with the Oath of Vengeance here, giving ourselves additional damage, which can be pretty effective. And Vengeance is an easier Paladin Oath to hold if you don't want to go with the Oathbreaker route. Now, level 2 is a big power spike for the Paladin because we get Divine Smites. So this can now apply to all of our weapon attacks, and we can also upcast these. We can also make them a reaction, so when we do a melee attack, it'll just add the additional Divine Smite damage by burning through our spell slots. Pretty good. Now, there's a couple of choices to make here for the fighting style. If we're going with an armor, like if we're going to use light armor, this would be the best choice. If you're using clothing, this doesn't actually count because it only applies when you're wearing armor. So this is something to keep in mind, what you want to use for your items. If you're going to use clothing, then take Duelist. This will give you a +2 to your melee attacks. Also, protection can be good too, giving disadvantage on attack against your allies, protecting them. And Great Weapon Master is not a good choice here because we don't use two-handed weapons. You could use the a longsword, I suppose, and get the benefit of that, but I do think that it's probably best to go with defense, and if you're going to use the clothing, go with dueling. Now, we're going to take for spells. I wouldn't fully recommend always using the smites, but having Bless can be really good. Thunderous Smite is not bad. Wrathful Smite is okay. These do burn through your bonus action, which you could use for Divine Favor or your other ability from the Vengeance Paladin. You can take those. They're not going to be absolutely game-changing for you, but there's something. It's mostly going to be Divine Smite that we use. Level 3 is nice because we could get the Vow of Enmity to give ourselves advantage on attack rolls for 10 turns, but we're not going to do that. We're going to go all in on the Wizard because this is actually makes us stronger. We now get access to level 4 spells like Ice Storm, which is massive, Confusion, which can grab a large group of enemies and make them basically do nothing. They have a 1 in 10 chance of actually acting normal. Minor Elemental is also quite good, and even greater invisibility can be used with Band of the Mystic Scoundrel if you want to be able to hide away after you do any type of spell casting. And you'll have to prepare, anytime you swap between classes, it will remove your selected spells, so you do have to go reapply the ones that you want to have applied. Just a little heads up there. But once we make it to level 8 here, we get some more spell selection. So Conjure Minor Elemental, I think, is a good choice. Heat Shield can be good to give yourself some extra defense against a specific damage type. And Greater Invisibility is never a bad choice. Now, at this point, I'd recommend grabbing whatever spells here that you like. We can use the Minor Elementals. I'm not going to. But for our next feat, Alert for the +5 to Initiative can be good, or an ability score improvement on our Intelligence to take it up to 20. Just a good choice always. At level 9, we get to our level 5 spells, with 2 of the best being Cone of Cold and Conjure Elemental. Our Conjure Elemental can do the cool effects. So the Water Elemental will apply vulnerability it applies Chilled, which gives a vulnerability to cold damage, doubling this, so that maximum of 64 damage becomes a 128. Pretty nice if you ask me. And for our prepared spells, I'd recommend having the Minor Elemental there as well. Cone of Cold is a good one to have, so we can roll with a spell selection such as that. And we can learn them from scrolls in a moment here. We'll have a great choice. Song of Defense, if you take damage during your Blade Song, you can expend a spell slot to subtract 5 damage per spell slot. Mindful of this. You can burn through your spell slots quickly just to reduce damage. It's better to use a shield spell, but this can be good if you're literally going about to die and you need to save yourself. I wouldn't use it often, though. And at this point, we're also going to get leveled. We'll be able to learn level 6 spells from scrolls. So we can learn Cone of Cold, or we can learn Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, Chain Lightning, etc. And we also get to take some more level 5 spells. Hold Monster being a good one. Don't take Seeming, it's the worst spell in the game. Even Cloud Kill can be good if you have Hero's Feast on your team because you won't get affected by that poison. It's kind of funny. Dominate Person's not a bad choice as well with what I'll show you we're going to do. And I would recommend having Stat Spread, something like that works good. Mirror Image just gives us a lot of armor class in addition to the shield spell. So we're pretty much unhittable too if we select specific gear. And again, this is the Valkyrie Queen Armor by Ren. So I'm just going to mention that again. It's on the PC mod manager. Hopefully we'll see that on console someday. The wonderful thing about this build is it's actually really friendly with gear. You can use a lot of different things and get a great effect from them. Now, one item I want to highlight here is an item that got fixed with patch 8 with the Gloves of the Battle Mage's Power. This previously sucked. It didn't work. But when you hit a target with a spell or a cantrip that uses a weapon, you gain Arcane Acuity. Believe it or not, we got multiple sources of that with Booming Blade, Divine Smites, but the best part about this is if we use Shadow Blade, it accounts on our melee attacks as well, and we can get multiple stacks of Arcane Acuity, which will give us a plus 10 to our spell save DC, so then we can use our Wizard spells or Paladin, so we got a 17 spell save DC for Wizard and 14 for the Paladin. Plus 10 gives that to 27 and 24 respectively, which is actually really good. I like the Diadem of Arcane Synergy for Helmet. This will give you, whenever you inflict a condition, which Booming Blade applies, you get Arcane Synergy, so our plus 5 from our Intelligence modifier to weapon attacks. That's really good. There's also the Helmet of Arcane Acuity here, if we're going with light armor. So that's one choice. We got light armor or clothing. Now, if you want to forego the Blade Song, you can also just go with a heavy armor and a shield. You won't be able to get the plus 3 to our, or plus 4 to our armor class from the Blade Song, but you could also just go that route there if you'd prefer. Now we can also go with a few different choices here. So the Diadem of Arcane Synergy, if we want to use clothing, that would be the way. If we want to use light armor, the Helmet of Arcane Acuity can stack really easily also with our weapon attacks. And also Booming Blade and Divine Smite both give 4 stacks because it counts as 2 separate weapon attacks for some reason. So the Helmet of Arcane Acuity is possibly the best choice there. But I want to toss a bone to the Diadem of Arcane Synergy because you can get it in Act 1 and it's really good. Also, if you want to cast more of the Hat of Fire Acuity or the Hat of the Storm Science power, will give you Arcane Acuity for casting. So that can be good too. And we want Arcane Acuity so that we can land command and hold person freely. Now, the Cloak of Protection is good, or if you're the Dark Urge, the Deathstalker Mantle. I also have the Ballast Armor here. If we're using the Ballast Armor, we want a weapon like the Knife of the Undermountain King here, which gives you piercing damage, which is doubled with the Ballast Armor. This is kind of a evil playthrough item, but you can get it on a good playthrough. If you want to go with something that's going to be for clothing and use Mage Armor, the Robe of the Weave is a good choice late game. Moon Devotion Robe is a good choice early game. Potent Robe is okay too if you want to have a bit higher charisma. But the Best of Soul Rejuvenation is another choice. This will just give us a better spell save DC and plus 2 to armor class, but we do have to use a Mage Armor to make this most effective. So make sure that you do have a spell or a scroll of that to be able to give yourself that extra armor class, because that'll bring it now up to plus 3 from the Mage Armor, puts up to 20. With Blade Song, it's 24. With Haste, it's 26. That's pretty good. And we can also, there's gloves that'll give you a plus 1 armor class. There's boots that'll give you a plus 1 armor class. So you can literally get your armor class up to about 30 here, depending on what you choose. Now, I have the Knife of the Undermountain King for weapon here. You can swap that out and use any type of, I've mentioned Valor Aloof. Early game is a good choice. This is another good choice. I also like to have a Dolor Amaris in the offhand. Whenever you do a critical hit, you do an extra 7 damage, which is double to 14 because it's piercing damage. If you have the Ballast Armor, or if you have Shadow Blade, it doubles the damage to 14 as well because it's psychic damage with the Resonance Zone, which is what I'm going to focus on. I also like the Boots of Stormy Clamor here to give yourself, or give the enemy 2 turns of reverberation. You can go with the Evasive Shoes, the Disintegrating Nightwalkers, lots of choices there from early Act 1. And the Gloves of Battle Mage's Power is good too, but you can also go with the Brain Drain Gloves if you're gonna use the Psychic Blade there, because that gives mental fatigue minus to the spell, or their Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma saving throws. So that's a good option. Gloves of Dexterity as well, as I mentioned. I think it's best to go with this stat up here, and we're gonna take a staff in our main hand to give ourselves the Shadow Blade upcasted. So make sure that you do have it prepared there, and we're going to upcast it to the highest level because it's free now, and then the staff disappears. So you got it without expending a spell slot, and it does a 48 of damage, which is just nuts. And then you can throw Dolor Amaris in the offhand. It gives that extra damage as mentioned. So yeah, and I also have the Amulet of Greater Health, although you can use any of the ones that gives you extra magic missiles, or Spell Savante Amulet, or a Periaptic Wound Closure if you're in Act 1. And then also, I like the Ring of Elemental Infusion. If you're in Honor mode, this won't work, but it gives you the 1d4 from Booming Blade on your next attack, so that's double thunder damage. However, it doesn't work on Honor mode, so that's something to keep in mind. Then the Diadem of the Ring of Arcane Synergy is a good choice. The Ring of Mental Inhibition, if they fail a saving throw, they get Mental Fatigue, is good too. Ring of Arcane Synergy there. And the thing with Mental Fatigue, it's almost like you're giving yourself the Arcane Acuity there. So minus to their saving throws, plus to yours. They're not going to be able to miss any of your saving throws. And then at the end, we got Hellrider Longbow for the +3 to our initiative so that we go first and control the battlefield. Now, I'll show you what this looks like in combat because there's quite a bit of gear and itemization there. You can also get a free elemental by using another staff, the Staff of Spell Power. So that's another thing to do before you go into an actual combat encounter because it's another free one. But since we got high levels in the wizard, we can actually learn back up to a level 5 spell. So you could go with, if you don't want to use the Myrmidons, I like the water elemental and the earth elemental. Those are two good choices as well. With the water elemental, you can apply chilled on its punches, and then you just go ahead here and you replenish your spell slot. So it's like you didn't even expend it, which is pretty nice. But his main attack is going to apply vulnerability to cold damage, so you can hit Cone of Cold or Odaluk's Freezing Sphere. And again, you want to learn these from scrolls that cost 300 gold, but that's perfectly fine. Since we have 2 levels of the spellcaster from a half spellcaster from the paladin, it still gives us full spell progression, which is awesome. Because then we can go ahead here with adding, I really like Odaluk's Freezing Sphere. I think it's one of the strongest spells in the game. And then Chain Lightning is another not bad option too, if you don't want to go with one of these other options. And one last piece of gear that I think works well is if you don't want to use the Ring of Protection, the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel gives you bonus action illusion and enchantment spells, so you can then do things like greater invisibility, command, and hold person as bonus actions, which is nuts. It's actually just nuts. So I already lost 2 stacks of my mirror image there, unfortunately, but we could have had our armor class up to a 34 here, getting a +6 to that armor class. That's got haste, blade song, cloak protection, and we could even get that even further if we have a ring, boots, gloves, helmet. Yeah, we could got our armor class really high if we wanted to, but even still, 28 and then eventually the 25 will be more than enough. So for our first turn, we want to stack up our Arcane Acuity. So we got the Gloves of the Battle Mage of Power, the Diadem of Arcane Synergy, or if you wanted to use the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, you could have went with that as well. But for the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to go ahead with a Booming Blade, because Booming Blade is going to be good. It's going to give us the 106, 20 damage, and then, yeah, a lot of damage. It's going to give us Arcane Synergy there. So it gives us a +2 to our spellcasting modifier there. And we want to go around just doing our attacks to stack that up. Now we can also go ahead with adding 2 reactions here and then turning on Divine Smites as a reaction. It's going to burn through your spell slot levels, the highest one first. So I'd put on Divine Smites for level 1, 2, 3. I don't like using level 4 spells on them. It does scale up to level 4, but that's more than enough. So once we go around to doing a weapon attack, we can just do a normal weapon attack and it's going to give us the Divine Smite damage. Unfortunately, it did it on the offhand attack there. Don't forget to turn off your dual wielding. We don't want to burn our bonus action there because we got our bonus action. Yeah, should have kept that there. But we now got a +4 to Arcane Acuity. Not good enough to cast a spell with, so I'm actually just going to go for another melee attack here. And that means another Booming Blade, so that's pretty good. We'll get a lot of damage in from that and keep our Arcane Synergy. Yeah, it's basically just one-shotting everybody. And then for our final action here, we'll just go with another attack, and then our Arcane Synergy will be pretty high. That was enough to damage another one. We now have that +10 to Arcane Acuity, which is great because, again, 28 for Wizards and then 25 for our Paladin saves. Pretty huge. And if we had a bonus action, we could have done Hold Person, Command, Greater Invisibility, Bless, Tasha City's Laughter, and Mirror Image there as a bonus action. But I was a goofy goober and forgot to turn off my dual wielding. And our Water Elemental also got an action here. What's great about this is Slam will actually do quite a bit of good for our team. And it's also got the ability to teleport, so it can move into positions that you may not be able to reach naturally with that free bonus action teleport there, and then you can get behind them and go with a Slam, which is going to make them vulnerable to cold damage. So boom, didn't do a lot of damage. You see there, chilled for 2 turns. So if we do Cone of Cold, it can double the damage, as I mentioned previously. So that's really good. And it's our turn now. We didn't get attacked, so we didn't lose our Arcane Acuity, which is perfect. So now there's those targets that have chilled on them, like that one there. What we can do is, unfortunately, we're not able to save our... Oh, actually, we could save our little elemental friend. Warp him out of there. Get him out of there. He's in the splash zone because we want to. Also, I have a mod that's making some issues here. I can't see my upper bar there. We have Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, which is one of the best spells in the game. We're going to drop one of those right there. Unfortunately, it's going to take more guards into the fight, but it'll showcase this build a little bit further. Didn't take out all the guards, but it made a lot of them slip, so that's great. That's kind of what we want. Now, we can go with either melee attacks. Make sure, again, dual wielding is turned off. And why we're going to do this is because then it's going to trigger the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. We always want to be doing at least one turn of one turn of melee, one turn, or one action. If you got haste on, you want to at least do some melee attacks. Oh, come on, that sucks. I was going to do an attack and then you follow up with a bonus action ability, but still enough to get the counterspell off, which is perfect. And yeah, counterspell can be one of the worst spells in the game. You want to shut that down with counterspell whenever possible. And if you have the lifted ability, you can also block it too. And here's the Song of Defense. It's not always going to be a good choice, especially if we're burning through Divine Smites at a quick rate. But it can reduce the damage that you take. So that one there, I used 5 less damage. It would have done 10 like that second shot did. Can potentially save you. Not always going to be a good choice though. So just a heads up on that. What's also funny is the Boots of Stormy Clamor. Difficult terrain counts the condition to apply reverberation. So yeah, we were able to stack that up pretty easily. We lost our haste, so we lost that extra armor class and lost the extra action. But with this, if there's any melee attackers you can go after, I'd recommend doing that. And you can actually get pretty crazy with what you're going to do. So we'll just do this for the interest of showcasing the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel. We'll go after a melee attack there and then follow up with a smite. You can also choose the Divine Smite if there's a target that you think may survive a lower level one. 120 plus 38. Never mind. We should have known that. That would have taken them out. Not even a critical hit. But we now have command or hold person. Why command is so good is when we have ice surfaces up, we can do command approach and just make them slip and fall, which is kind of funny. If we have someone with Spirit Guardians, we can make them walk into our Spirit Guardians. And if you got command halt, that can also be a good one too. But I like the command approach, and then we can upcast it for multiple targets. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 targets there, maybe a 5th target. So we can upcast it to the 5th level, and we'll have a pretty good spell save DC to make sure that this does land. And we're going to hit all these targets here with it, hopefully. And boom. Yeah, we got most of them there. Hit with that arcane, or the command. One of them survived it, but that's fine. And we'll just use our water elemental. You always want to have that command ready to stop, though, with your spells. Counterspell being an extremely effective spell against a lot of things. Keep your reaction for that. They're getting shoved to keep themselves out of the command there. The nice thing about commands is you actually draw a lot of opportunity attacks. And that's partially why I wanted to use it, just to give yourself an idea of what you can pop off with it. Because it's really nice on a variety of different team setups. And they just run towards you and slip, which is so funny, as I mentioned. And it'll also give them mental fatigue. So yeah, you can get a lot of conditions applied, and especially the Boots of Stormy Clamor further stacking. And it's our next turn with a lot of things that we can hit. If you got the Lifted ability free cast, that can be a nice way to get yourself another Odaluk's Freezing Sphere, because that's kind of the best choice here for, especially if there's 5 targets or 6 targets here that we want to hit. We'll just blast with one of those. That was enough to take out most of them. Perfect. And we do have a bonus action attack that we can do, so that's kind of nice. It's not going to be maximum amounts of damage, but we can also use Misty Step or just Flourish, I guess. But we'll just go with the offhand attack there. It was enough. We had to apply the Divine Smite to take out targets. I guess we got everybody with that Odaluk's Freezing Spear. As mentioned, this is pretty overpowered. I messed up, walked into that zone. Also, Arcane Synergy makes your blade blue, which looks so cool. But that is it. That is a very powerful Paladin Wizard Multiclass. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video.